I'm Emily.
And I'm Ann.
And this is Fountain Avenue Dishes.
Welcome to the show.
That sounds like a really yummy week.
It really is delicious.
Should I knock on your door?
Yes, you can come to my house anytime.
Maybe we need like one of those, like a pulley system where there's like a string between the windows and I just put like a box on it.
That would work.
And then I send it to you and you put the food in and then we like bring it back.
Welcome to the inaugural issue of Fountain Avenue Dishes, coming to you from the Benchmark Studios. This is kind of crazy because when we met over 5 years ago, it's kind of nuts that it's been that long, we had these long, drawn-out conversations and we would joke about having a podcast. And who would have ever thought that we would be doing just that? I think we should tell the story of how we met first because it's pretty cool. So Emily and her family bought the house next door to my house during the pandemic. Coincidentally, that house was my parents' house, the house where I grew up. And we started talking in the backyard one day, and she mentions that she's a dietitian. And we have this mutual interest in food. And that conversation led to another conversation and lots of backyard conversations and phone calls. And first of all, I really scored in the new neighbor department because they're amazing. But over the months, we just realized that we could work really well together. And food, I've written recipes, authored the Fountain Avenue Kitchen website for almost 13 years now. And nutrition is so integrally involved in that, that having somebody who is truly an expert in nutrition, she's a registered dietitian, just felt like a great fit to take the blog and the recipes to another level and deliver really good science-backed nutrition data to the readers. And so anyway, we have been working together successfully for 5 years now. And it's been so nice to have someone join me in what was really just sort of a solo venture, because it's always nice to collaborate and have two minds working together. And I think it's really broadened what we can bring to the readers. So, and as a really fun note, one of our weekly meetings is at Emily's house. So every Thursday, I get to go back to my childhood home. And she makes me a cup of coffee, and I sit in the kitchen, and I feel like I am truly home. So that's just really kind of cool for me.
Yeah, and one of the crazy things, too, about when we met, so we bought this house, spring 2020 in the thick of things. I had just finished my master's at NYU in clinical nutrition, and there was no graduation. It was spring. There was no graduation, very anticlimactic for me, who had spent the past 3 years raising two teeny tiny children, getting them through while I got myself through school. And my plan was to go back to the hospital setting, which was where I was before I had kids. I was deep in clinical. I was a renal dietitian, working on the units. And this opportunity really had never occurred to me. But one of the last classes I took at NYU was in intuitive eating. And I had taken a little bit of a sidestep into this non-clinical nutrition, thinking about nutrition in different ways, thinking about it outside of medical nutrition therapy. And so it was when I met Ann, which was when I was deeply thinking about this, it triggered that idea of, well, maybe I'm not going back to the hospital. Maybe there's something else for me in nutrition. And it was like an open door. And it was one of those moments where you can kind of just walk through this open door and take a chance and see where things go for your career, even though it wasn't what you had planned. And I'm a planner, and Ann's a planner too. So I think maybe both of us took a little bit of a leap.
It was such a leap, and I love that we did it. And I feel like it's just really worked out so well. And we continue to have new ideas and it's been been just a fun journey, and I feel like there's always new things on the horizon that we never have enough time. We're always thinking of the next thing, and it's been exciting. And I remember early on, it really impressed me. You literally cooked your way through the website. You just from the beginning.
That's
dove
why,
in, and I'm like, she's totally invested. I love this.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, I was kind of like, yeah, because I remember my mother-in-law, who also lives in the neighborhood, who raised her family, my husband there in the neighborhood. I said, we met our new neighbor, Ann Fulton. And she said, Ann Fulton? I know Ann Fulton. She is right here in this magazine. And like flipped through the Susquehanna Styles or something. And it was, I don't remember what it was, but I think it was like, I want to say it was blueberry muffins. And coincidentally, I had made blueberry muffins for you and your family as like a hi, like we're gonna like live next door in like this little tin.
And the kids drew the picture on the top. I still have that tin. I didn't take the picture off. You're gonna get it back someday, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, that was like it's like really cute."
That's very sweet. I put this tin. It was like a very 2020 DIY gift.
I loved it.
And but two things. One, I was like, "Oh my gosh, she already makes blueberry muffins that are probably way better than these." And second of all, she is gluten-free. So I made her muffins that regular flour in them. And that was like, here's my gift to you. But from then on, what I did was, because when Gina had said that you were such a great cook and you have this website, and I went on it and I was like, oh my goodness. We just started to make our way through the recipes, and we actually were kind of straddling between New York City, which was our prior home for the past 17 years, and Lancaster. And so we were kind of like living in both ways. And because everything was all masked up, we really did most of our work the first 2 years completely virtually.
Yeah, that's true.
Mostly virtually.
That feels like so long ago.
So I spent a lot of time in a silo, kind of like working on stuff. And a lot of that was just familiarizing myself. It's like when you are dating someone and then you decide to move in together, but like one of you moves in to the other person's apartment, and it's like always that person's apartment. Like it can never be like a joint apartment, because it was that person's apartment first. So I feel like it was Fountain Avenue Kitchen was and is your baby. And at the time I still felt like it was kind of like I had to familiarize myself so much with it. I was moving into this new Fountain Avenue Kitchen home. And 5 years later, I'm now feeling like more ownership over it. Like it's part of me as well.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Maybe we moved into our own apartment together at some point.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, because we did we've like overhauled the website, and just because you have to keep doing that to make it fresh and like very user friendly. Somebody once described websites to me as a living, breathing organism, and it's true. You have to constantly tend to it and update it, and just to keep it working as we want it to, and to make it really user friendly in terms of search options and so forth. But the gluten-free comment is interesting because there are a lot of people in my family and extended family who are gluten-free, and but I started this site before I had officially had to go gluten-free. So there are some recipes still that I can't make gluten-free, but very few, because I tend to make, if I'm doing a baked good, I make it both ways, because I want to, people who are using regular all-purpose flour to be able to make this with success. And then I want to make a modification. I want to make sure it's okay both ways. And having some, I think any family with eating restrictions learns this. You become sort of sensitive that a lot of people have different dietary needs and eating restrictions, allergies. So it may not be gluten, it may be dairy, it may be nuts. So that has informed my recipes a lot. I really try to cook in ways that are very easy to adapt, so that if somebody has a dairy allergy or a gluten allergy in their family, they can make this recipe and it will be delicious for their family as well. I don't want it to be good for being gluten-free. I want it to just be good. And so that's really been important to me. And I think feedback that we've gotten very consistently is that people appreciate having choices, and whether it's just a preference or a need. That's been something, because at the end of the day, I started this to hopefully make people's lives a little easier. I love to cook, but I know day to day it can be a grind. And at dinner time, everybody's starving, and it's often a really busy time of the day. And it was my way of saying, you can do this, and it doesn't have to be difficult. We can repurpose the leftovers, and and then if you make a meal, you reap the benefits of not only something delicious, but maybe sitting down around the table with your family and enjoying that time. And as the kids get older, that time becomes far more precious. Everybody's busy and going in their different directions, and you're getting to that point of your life right now where like swim team is always at dinner time.
Yeah.
And
Wendy's is pretty tempting.
so right? And there's
Right
nothing
there.
wrong with that.
Yeah.
If you have to pull through the drive-through.
Yeah.
But there are ways we have found to do it almost as quickly. Not every night, but you can
Yeah.
do things really fast and have it ready to scoop and serve your family or just yourself, whoever you're feeding, and it doesn't. You don't have to run out for it, and you can have it right there. So it just takes a little thinking ahead.
Well, and I think to go back a little bit too to what you were saying about the substitutions and the options, it's remarkable like how much time you put into making sure that every recipe and every option is vetted. And the reason that that's like so important is because Fountain Avenue Kitchen is now like a trusted website. Like there's some people who say, I cook from this person, I cook from this person, like Ina Garden's cookbook, oh yes, like it's great. To me, Fountain Avenue Kitchen is so worthy up there with all those top names, but in a different way, in this like highly like just trusted community person where like people all around can trust that they know that if they're testing a recipe, like you have put your heart into it, you've put your love into it, you've put your details into it, and it's gonna be good.
Thank you. That's so nice. That makes me feel so good. The funny thing is, when I started the Fountain Avenue Kitchen, I started it as a Facebook page. And I had a Facebook account, but I had never once posted anything on Facebook. I had never followed a blog. So this was so outside of my comfort zone. And I remember I had a separate career. I sold real estate. And I had like an economics background. I worked in banking for a while. And my husband was traveling a lot, like overnight, away for weeks at a time, he'd come home for the weekends, but he was gone a lot, and it was the day and age before everything was done online, so I'd have to like deliver documents, and I may be having paper signed at like 11 o'clock at night because everything was like on a time crunch, and I had 2 young kids, and I remember thinking like this is just not working with my schedule and his schedule, and I either need a nanny like 24/7 or I need to make a change. So I put my real estate license in escrow, and I did a lot of volunteer work, and I was doing things with the kids in the schools, but I kind of like wanted something more, and cooking had always been really an avocation for me. I like to create recipes. My dad had gone gluten-free before there was like a cup for cup gluten-free substitution. So I felt my mom, every night when I was growing up, she had dinner on the table. She was great. But when the kids were out of the house, she was kind of done. She didn't love to cook. My grandmother was the one that loved to cook. And side note, she lived on Fountain Avenue. So when I had to name this venture, it was her kitchen on Fountain Avenue that really kind of had some meaning to me. But anyway, so I wanted my dad to be able to eat his favorite chocolate chip cookies. And so I really loved that process of experimenting, the sort of the science behind it, and creating in the kitchen. So anyway, I was realizing that friends who also had young kids were really struggling at dinner time specifically, and pulling through the drive-through, getting like the Happy Meal and maybe a salad for themselves. And there were always sort of frozen like bagel bites and things in the freezer. And I remember, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but just like it could be a little broader than that, and it doesn't have to be difficult. So it was my way. I was like, how can I share sort of the strategies that have worked for my family and for me? And putting it on a Facebook page was the most efficient thing. I thought that was more efficient than writing out recipe cards and sharing them with my friends. So anyway, I posted the first recipe, and I remember posting it and thinking, like, what have I just done? Like, I felt really vulnerable. And then the next day, I remember a couple of people saying, oh, I'm going to make it. And then they made it, and they said that they liked it. And I was like, wow, I guess I should do another one. So it kind of snowballed a little bit, but it was incumbent upon me at that point, like, people are actually cooking the recipes. I mean, I guess that was my plan, but like, I'd never really thought through the reality of that. So I'm like, well, they better be good. If people are going to the grocery store and spending money for the ingredients and they're taking their time to make it, I want it to deliver. I would feel really bad if they were like, that was disappointing.
No, the recipes are so good. So much so, actually, I don't think I've ever told you this, but that like over these past 5 years, because I've been cooking so much from Fountain Avenue Kitchen, and then I think in turn that makes me just cook more because I'm, cooking for the site. But Chris, my husband, said, you're just like so good at cooking now. Which I feel like there was a lot of complaints before. So the complaint train has decreased ever since I've been trained by Fountain Avenue Kitchen. And I think it's just putting in the work, figuring things out. And now I can riff a little bit on my own and be more successful in that, I think.
You do such a great job. Yeah, I feel like there's been and I think we all have like that evolution, right?
Yeah.
It's like you do anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. I remember one time I had to make a cake, and I just put the flour and the baking soda and the salt, like just the dry ingredients, in a bowl, and I put it aside, and I thought but I felt like I started it. And sometimes the hardest part is just starting it. But once you've started it, you feel like you're over a hump.
Yeah.
So just doing that little bit of advanced prep.
Mine is pulling the pan out. Like, I can like pull a pot. Like, to me, if
step.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to make pasta, getting the giant pot out from under the thing and like filling it with water and putting it on the stove so that like when I walk in the door, if I have like the kids and all this stuff, all I have to do is switch the thing to power boil and I can go about my way.
Life can be hard,
It's a fun game, Anne,
Yeah,
like,
I know, but life can be a grind.
a Tetris game.
Yeah, and then we laugh about it because like it is kind of silly, but it works.
Well, I had two mom friends. I call them mom friends, but they're really my friends. But they just happen to have kids in the same class as I do. And it was like the beginning of the school year, and I think it was like a half day or something ridiculous. But the kids were still so little, so their half day was like an hour and a half. And I live closer to school, but the two moms live further away. So for
They're
them
like,
to
that's
go
not
back
a half day, that's a blank.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, can I go pee? So they came over to my house like during this very short gap. And I remember they were just like sitting at you have like two bar stools at the island. And I'm just like talking and we're having this conversation. I'm chopping. And by the end of it, I'm like, can you guys taste this? And they're like, did you just make a soup? Like while we were, and I'm like, no, but this was like the 1 hour. I'm like, I don't care if you're here, but like, this is getting
That is
done.
the thing about the Fountain Avenue Kitchen recipes. Like they're so ridiculously, I mean, most of them are so ridiculously easy.
Yeah.
But it's just the flavor. And I feel like there's this, like what I want to convey to people is it's like a few basic ingredients and how you pull things together. And there's just a little bit of an art to it and a methodology, but it can be really easy to eat really well and pretty wholesomely. There's a meal that I'll often do for Christian, my younger son, if he kind of comes in and needs a meal and I don't really have something like handy. And it's a simple sauce that he likes, like an aioli. And he likes the smoked paprika aioli, which is on the site. And there are a couple other ones, too, that I'll do regularly because they're just so easy and just have so much flavor. And I'll get rice, and I bake my baked rice recipe. It's so easy for people who don't like to eat the stovetop. It gets gunky or, people struggle with that. Again, if you use a scale, it'll be perfect. But there's the baked rice is really hands-off and easy. But I might not have rice, and he's like hungry like 5 minutes ago. So I keep a couple of those packets of pre-made rice in my pantry just for, when I need it right now. And I'll take like greens, if I have cucumbers, like red pepper, in the fridge, whatever veggies I have, and then I'll do cans. He loves salmon, and I've canned salmon. You could do tuna if you prefer, if you have leftover chicken. And so it's just a bowl. It's like what Chipotle came up with the bowl concept years ago. I guess they were the ones that made it famous. But there's so many ways to make a great bowl. So veg, rice, or whatever grain you have on hand and want to use, and a protein. And then you use the sauce and you bring it all together. And then from there, if you have some nuts or you have pickled onions, or, if you have avocado, if you have edamame in your freezer, thaw that. That's
I'm thinking I'm gonna stick that in a wrap and wrap it right up.
Right? You could do it that way.
Do, yeah.
And if you don't want rice, you can do it as a greens bowl. I mean, it's so easy to put. So I love to think that way. Like, what can I pull together? If you have black beans in your pantry, use that as your protein or extra fiber. But one day he came in and he was in a hurry, and he had been training for this half Ironman, so he was eating like so much food, and he needed like a hearty snack. And he's like, "Mom, I bet you could make that bowl for me in 5 minutes." And I was like, okay, like he's old enough to make his own bowl, but I was challenged, and I love him, so I was like,
and somehow incorporate peanut butter into it.
yeah, I did not do that. I just take a spoonful of peanut butter. But anyway, so I did it, and I literally did that in under 5 minutes, and I was really proud of myself. And he's like, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And you're always happy when your kid tells you you're, for any reason, and we laughed about it. But anyway, so that's the type of thing. I feel like if we have a couple things like that in our back pocket, we can we can get the job done.
Yes.
And sometimes even have fun doing it. But more to the point, you bring this whole nutrition piece to the site, which is amazing. And as we get through this podcast in subsequent episodes, we're going to tackle a lot of really hot button issues. There's so much that we read about, we hear about in the news, we see on social media that it's hard to know what's right, what's best for our bodies, what's healthy. And there are a lot of myths out there. There are a lot of studies that we sort of rely on, but should we be? So you have a lot to offer there. And I think one of the things we really look forward to is talking about some of those issues, but also hearing from readers and listeners what are their questions, and on both food and nutrition topics. I think people might have questions, and these are the types of things that we can get into, like, do I have to give up my nightly glass of wine because we're hearing that that's bad for us? Or are fish oil supplements helpful? What all these other supplements that we hear about, like, what about organic food? There's just so many questions, like, what's the right way of looking at these things? So I think it'll be fun to kind of go down some of those rabbit holes. And I think, for people in my generation, like, you couldn't eat, everything was fat-free for a while. I remember when I was in college, we would get these huge muffins at the campus store that were fat-free.
Sure.
We didn't care about how much sugar was in them, sort of all of that. And I think for so many people in that generation, my generation, it was ingrained in us that fat is bad, but fat is so good. But there's different kinds of fat, So anyway, we have so many things to talk about. I think it's going to be really, really fun and engaging, and it'll be great to have reader and listener input and questions.
Yeah.
And then talk a little bit about what we're cooking and what's kind of on our menus. So just to sort of fun ending note, what I'm cooking this week, I'm making chicken corn soup this week. Jack, my husband, loves it. And I coincidentally got an email a couple of days ago from a reader, and she was asking, my recipe has hard-boiled eggs in it, which, if you don't like eggs, you could skip it, but I think it's such a nice extra, the little chunks of egg white in there. I just love it. But she was saying, when I reheat it, if I'm going to reheat leftovers, should I put the eggs in at the beginning, or should I put them in after I reheat it? And I said, if you just gently reheat it, it will work fine. If you boil eggs too long, the whites could become rubbery. And then she said, can I freeze soup with the eggs in it? That you should probably add them later, because if you freeze eggs, it can sort of degrade the texture. at the end of her email, she said, I think I'm probably your oldest fan. I'm 100 years old, and she's still cooking. And I just marveled. I was like, that is so cool. I have a reader who's 100 years old. She's cooking my recipes. And I mean, like, total goals, right? To be cooking at 90, 100.
Yeah, she was like alive. She was like a flapper girl.
Right? I mean,
It's
like,
crazy.
I thought that I would just like love that. I love emails and notes and messages from readers. I respond to all of them because I just really appreciate
Amazing.
that people like are dialed in and follow along and cook the recipes.
I mean, 100-year-old has cooked so many recipes in her life. So if she's following you, I feel like that kind of like shows.
I loved it. So chicken corn, we're both making chicken corn soup this week. And
right.
yeah, I'm excited about it.